The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the program. I've got a lot of great stuff coming up today, including an interview with Omaha Mayor Jim Suttle. He is a Democrat in favor of gun control. As you know, Nebraska is a red state, Lewis, and that probably has a number of complexities associated with it.
Complexities? That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. There's a Kansas bill which is calling for HIV-positive people or people who have AIDS to be quarantined. The bill is Kansas House Bill 2183. Now, I tried to resist the immediate reaction to think that this was just some homophobic nonsense that makes no sense, that is unfairly targeting people who are HIV positive or have AIDS. So I said, let me start by looking at the bill, looking at the text of the bill instead of looking at news stories about it, and let's see what's in there, right? So I look up the bill, and there's a number of different conditions where it would basically, the bill would update the state's public health statute by allowing the quarantine of Kansans who have a number of different infectious diseases. So I said, well, all right, in the interest of fairness, let's look at these diseases and look at how these diseases are transmitted and see if it's logical for HIV/AIDS to be included in that. It seems like a fair way to at least start going about this, don't you think?
Very fair.
So what's on the list? Here's most of the diseases that are on the list. Hepatitis, meningococcal disease, tuberculosis, measles, mumps, pneumonic plague, rabies, cutaneous anthrax, HIV, AIDS. Well, Lewis, that's a good list to start with. Let's see how these are transmitted.
Okay.
Hepatitis. Depending on the type of hepatitis, A, B, or C, it can be transmitted by blood, sweat, tears, saliva, breast milk, any parenteral route, etc. So that's pretty contagious.
Right.
What about meningococcal disease? Well, that is throat or respiratory secretions can transmit it, similar to cold and flu, just a little bit less contagious. What about tuberculosis? Rare, but what if someone had tuberculosis? How is it transmitted? Transmitted through the air, meaning you cough, you sneeze, you talk, you spit near someone, they could contract it.
Right.
What about measles and mumps? Highly contagious through the nose and throat. With measles, 90% of people who are close by become infected. Mumps, also same thing, coughing, sneezing, highly, highly contagious. What about pneumonic plague? Breathing in around the person who is infected. If they have sneezed and there are any saliva droplets in the air, you could get infected. Transmission happens that way. What about rabies? Well, saliva, a bite. Other methods are possible, rarely documented. What about cutaneous anthrax? That can happen through the skin, ladies and gentlemen, through inhalation, eating it, which is very rare, except in developing countries if you're eating an animal that has rabies. What about HIV/AIDS? Lewis, to be included on this list and to not appear to be unfairly targeting and maybe opening the door to further stigmatizing people who have HIV or AIDS, it should be probably equally contagious, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
Okay, well, how is HIV/AIDS transmitted? As we know, blood, semen, vaginal secretions, breast milk, period. Saliva, tears, sweat, feces, urine, coughing, sneezing, not infectious. What's the verdict on this, Lewis?
It doesn't really seem to fit in the category with the rest of these.
Natan, does my analysis make sense?
It does. Let's get into the politics of it.
Yeah, I mean, so the politics are what? The politics are very clear. Back in 1988, Kansas banned quarantining individuals with AIDS. If this law is passed, it would basically bring back the ability for health officials to intimidate those with HIV/AIDS and threaten them with isolation from the population. It's one of these situations where it's easier to get tuberculosis, whooping cough, the flu than it is to get HIV. We have better drugs for HIV now than we do for many of these other conditions, yet this is going to allow for the further stigmatization of individuals who have HIV/AIDS, which, of course, in the minds of a lot of the people involved in this legislation, is connected with being gay, and this would be another straw to grasp at to continue isolating people who are gay, which maybe they believe is a choice.
Yeah, but is this a bill that really stems from paranoia about HIV as it relates to people who are gay, or is it just bigotry?
What do you think about that, Natan? I don't know. You could see it both ways.
Well, it's probably a combination of both. They probably don't understand how HIV works And because of that and the 30-year-old, association with gay sex, they probably combine the two and just are bigoted towards gay people who they think are the ones that are transmitting HIV.
If I lived in Kansas, or even if you don't, I would call the Kansas House and say 2183, House Bill 2183 is not acceptable.